Welcome to paragraph 6.1 about India, which is of course a huge country. In this lesson I would like to show you the following adjectives. I would like to show you what a glacial river is, what floodplains are and why they are fertile, what a delta is, what coastal plains are and why they are fertile, about the population density of India, the caste system, which cities are megacities, why the economic differences in India are so big, and what the informal sector is. But first of all, the glacial rivers. What is a glacial river? Well, it is a river fed by melting ice from a glacier. And of course, on the north of India we find the Himalaya, and it contains a lot of ice and snow, and when that melts, it flows down the river all through the lowest point, which is in this case near the Bay of Bengal, near Bangladesh. And of course, when these rivers flood, they will have a lot of sediment, and these are called the floodplains. The floodplains are the areas where the flow speed of the water reduces, and when they flood, the sediment is being thrown across the river on that floodplain, and this contains a lot of minerals from the mountains, and of course these minerals make these soil types very, very fertile. And you can see that on the picture that these areas contain most of the agriculture areas of India. When we follow the river, the delta can be found in the lowest part of the river, and in this case it's near the Bay of Bengal, the Gulf of Bengal. And for example, the Ganges Delta in Bangladesh is very important because the Ganges flows from the Himalaya to the Gulf of Bengal in Bangladesh, and at the last part of the river the flow is very slow, so a lot of sedimentation occurs. Because of the sedimentation, the flow is being blocked, so the water can't get to the sea, and it searches another way to reach the sea. So new river arms develop, and the same process happens again. There is a new part which sedimentates and blocks the flow, so the water has to look for another location. And you can see on the picture that there are a lot of arms from the main river flowing into the sea. And when you wait a long time, it creates a new piece of land, and this is called the delta, and it increases itself seaward, so that means that the country actually grows. And you can see that on the color of the water, it's brown, and that means that the water contains a lot of sediment, and when this sediment is higher than the sea level, of course, it creates new land. These coastal plains are very, very fertile again, and there are other examples to be found, like in this case the coast of Coromandel. Rivers come together, the Kaveri, the Palar, the Penna and the Krishna, and their sources are in the West Ghats and flow eastwards through the Deccan Plateau and the Tamil Nadu coastal plain to the Gulf of Bengal. And again, a lot of fertile sediments being deposited over there and creates areas which are fertile and are used for the agriculture areas. The population density of India shows that if you look at the map, the coastal areas and the floodplains of the river are the most important ones. Of course, the cities have a higher population density as well, and the rest of India, as you see on this map, is less populated. India is a federal state like the USA or Germany, and that means that provinces have an own government. And that is great because India has a lot of official languages and cultures. There are 23 different cultures with their own languages. In fact, there are many more. There are officially 100 languages available in India, and 23 biggest ones are allowed, and 6 are official country languages, which means that the provinces of the country do have their own language, and you can see them on this map. English, of course, is not the mother tongue of the country, but it's a second language, and it's obliged in every province. That means that you have to learn English next to the mother tongue of the region, and there's a reason for that, because if you speak English, you can communicate with everyone within the country's borders, and that's very important for the economy. Then, 80% of the inhabitants are Hindu, and 160 million people are Muslim. And these people most of the time live in Tamil Nadu in the south or in the upper province of Kashmir, which has a border with Pakistan, which is of course a Muslim country as well. Well, then the caste system, what is that? Well, is actually a way of dividing a country's different social groups into parts of the country, and you can see it on this picture. It contains several layers of groups of people, and very important, you cannot escape from that group. If you are born a Dalit, you will stay a Dalit, and you have the only possibility to marry someone from that social group as well. So you're not allowed to escape from that group. It is abolished, which means that it's not in use anymore, but it's still very important. These days, lower groups are allowed to get better jobs, but it's still very difficult to get one. But if you look at the agricultural areas of the caste system, it's still very important. So people there marry within their social group. And of course, the higher the group, the more important you are, and the richer you are. Then, mega cities. Unfortunately, I couldn't change the name of this slide, so in this case it's in Dutch, and you can see that there are 5 very big cities: Delhi, Mumbai, Kolkata, Chennai and Bangalore, which contains more than 10 million inhabitants. It does not say that these are the richest parts of the country, because there are big economic differences in India. You can see that the areas that are close to the coast are normally pretty important, and that had all to do with the colonial past. There were investments made by, for example, the UK in the colonial past, but nowadays multinationals do DFIs. They do direct foreign investments in these areas. There are special economic zones there where foreign companies are allowed to reside with less environmental rules, or they have to pay less tax than in other regions, so these regions can develop themselves faster than the other ones. And on this map you can see which regions, the dark blue ones, are the richest ones. Of course, these rich parts of the country, they attract a lot of people who want to work there, and that means that a big informal sector is being formed. And what is an informal sector? Well, this is the sector which contains an amount of people who are not registered as working, and of course they do not pay tax. This happens because unemployment is a big problem in India, and many people try to find a job in the city because the wages are higher there, but it develops a problem like the article on the left. In 2015, 2 million people reacted on 368 workplaces, jobs in Uttar Pradesh. So that means that there weren't enough jobs at all for these people. And on the right you can see that a huge portion of India's labour force works in the informal sector. You can see that's almost 90% of the total workforce. That's incredibly high, especially when you look at other countries like China or South Korea. So, you see, India is a diverse country which contains a lot of differences, of course. And that's interesting because of the fact that it is so different than other countries in the world. It develops in another way. And in this paragraph, we are going to look, in this chapter, we are going to look at the way that this country could develop itself.